You think Depression-era Americans only stretched legal rations and made do with government handouts? Think again. When hunger gripped America in the 1930s, desperate families crossed legal lines that would shock us today, risking arrest for survival. Here are 30 illegal foods Americans ate during the Great Depression, proving hunger knew no legal boundaries. Moonshine whiskey was once the liquid currency of Depression America, distilled in secret stills hidden deep in forests where revenuers rarely ventured. Families set up copper stills in remote locations, fermenting corn mash with sugar before distilling it into clear alcohol that brought cash when nothing else would. The operation violated prohibition laws, yet thousands risked arrest because moonshine meant survival money when crops failed. The smell of fermenting mash traveled for miles, so families posted lookouts and disguised operations. Each batch took days to produce, requiring careful temperature control to prevent explosions or toxic contamination. Children watched for law enforcement vehicles and never spoke about what happened in the woods. This wasn't recreational drinking, but economic survival, turning corn into liquid worth $5 a gallon when factory wages barely reached $10 weekly. Families understood the risks, raids, imprisonment, fines, but chose illegal distilling over starvation, creating networks that sustained entire communities through impossible times. Poached deer meat fed families through winters when legal seasons closed and game wardens patrolled forests seeking violators. Men slipped into woods before dawn, tracking deer through snow, knowing one animal provided 60 pounds of protein. The meat was processed quickly in root cellars, hidden from neighbors who might report the illegal kill to authorities. Every part was used: meat cured or canned, bones boiled for broth, hide tanned for leather. Wardens could confiscate equipment, impose fines families couldn't pay, or jail breadwinners, leaving wives and children without support. Yet hunger overrode fear, and forest trails filled with quiet men carrying wrapped venison home under darkness. Some communities developed elaborate warning systems, children running between houses when authorities approached. Families shared meat among trusted neighbors, creating food security networks outside legal frameworks. This wasn't sport hunting, but desperate survival, turning illegal wildlife into the difference between starvation and making it through brutal winter months when store-bought meat became impossible luxury. Raw milk sold secretly violated pasteurization laws that rural families considered government overreach interfering with traditional food. Farmers delivered warm, unpasteurized milk in recycled bottles to customers who trusted farm cleanliness over factory processing. Transactions happened quickly, money exchanged without receipts that could prove illegal sales to health inspectors. Families valued raw milk for cream content and nutritional superiority, believing pasteurization destroyed vital vitamins their children needed. Each gallon sold for 25 cents when pasteurized cost 35, making the difference crucial for families counting pennies. Inspectors could impose fines, confiscate livestock, or force farm closures, destroying livelihoods built over generations. Yet farmers continued early deliveries, customers waiting by kitchen doors, both understanding risks but choosing fresh milk over legal compliance. Some developed coded signals to indicate safe delivery times. This created underground dairy networks sustaining communities, while defying health regulations designed to protect consumers from contamination and disease. Home-slaughtered pork bypassed inspection requirements families couldn't afford. Neighbors gathered for butchering days, processing hogs into ham, bacon, sausage without official oversight. The work happened in backyards using knowledge passed through generations to cure meat and render fat. Inspectors required permits, facility checks, and fees totaling more than the pig's value, making legal slaughter economically impossible for subsistence farmers. Each uninspected hog represented sustenance and risk. Families faced fines, confiscation, prosecution for processing their own livestock. Yet butchering continued in early morning hours, meat divided among families who'd helped, creating community food security outside legal frameworks. Women developed intricate methods to disguise illegal pork processing as normal household activities. Children learned to scrub away blood evidence before inspectors might arrive on surprise visits. The preserved meat sustained families through winter, each ham and bacon slab representing both nourishment and calculated risk. This wasn't commercial production, but household survival, turning home-raised animals into protein that kept families alive. Wild mushrooms foraged from private property constituted trespassing, yet families gathered these protein-rich foods wherever they grew. Women and children slipped onto abandoned farms at dawn, collecting morels and chanterelles sprouting after spring rains. Knowledge of safe varieties required expertise passed through generations, elders teaching identification while warning about toxic lookalikes that could kill. Each pound provided nutrients when kitchens held only beans, making legal risk worthwhile for families facing malnutrition. Property owners occasionally pursued trespassers with arrest threats, though most ignored foragers taking food that would otherwise rot. The mushrooms were eaten fresh, dried for winter, or traded with neighbors in barter economies sustaining communities. Families developed detailed maps of productive foraging locations, marking which properties had sympathetic owners. Children learned to move quietly through woods, leaving no trace of their presence. Women carried multiple baskets to distribute findings among extended family networks. This wasn't recreational foraging, but survival gathering, turning wild fungi into food security while violating property rights protecting private ownership. Untaxed tobacco grown in hidden patches violated federal controls, making legal farming nearly impossible for small producers. Families planted tobacco in remote clearings, harvesting leaves by hand without paying excise taxes exceeding the crop's market value. The dried tobacco sold directly to neighbors or traded for goods, creating cash when legitimate crops brought nothing. Revenue agents sought illegal operations, confiscating plants, destroying barns, and prosecuting growers who couldn't prove tax payment. Each plant represented economic survival and serious legal jeopardy, with penalties including heavy fines and imprisonment for tax evasion. Yet families continued because one harvest could mean keeping the farm versus foreclosure. Children recognized revenue vehicles and ran to warn adults who frantically hid processing equipment. Some communities established elaborate warning bell systems signaling agent arrivals. Women developed methods to disguise tobacco curing as legitimate agricultural activities. The crop dried in barns that looked abandoned but remained carefully monitored. This wasn't commercial agriculture but desperate cash cropping, turning illegal tobacco into money families needed for everything else. Trapped fur-bearing animals outside legal seasons provided pelts families sold when other income disappeared. Men and boys set trap lines through forests, checking them before dawn to harvest beavers, muskrats, and foxes whose fur brought cash from buyers not asking questions. Pelts were skinned, stretched, dried in hidden locations, then sold through networks supplying urban markets with fur officially not existing. Game wardens pursued illegal trappers, confiscating equipment worth months of income and charging violators with crimes carrying jail time. Each pelt might bring $3 when weekly wages were $10, making risk worthwhile for families with no options. Sons learned trapping from fathers spanning generations, skills deployed outside legal frameworks. Trap lines required daily checking regardless of weather, men walking miles through snow to harvest catches before they spoiled. Families developed sophisticated systems for hiding pelts during surprise inspections. Women learned to stretch and cure hides quickly. Minimizing time evidence remained visible. Communities shared trapping intelligence, warning each other about warden movements and patrol patterns. Bootleg sugar sold without ration stamps violated wartime controls limiting legal purchases. Dealers acquired sugar through theft or corrupt distribution, selling at inflated prices to families desperate for preservation ability. Each 5-pound bag cost double the legal price, but families paid because sugar meant jams and preserved fruit stretching limited diets through winter. Ration officials prosecuted buyers and sellers, viewing illegal sales as unpatriotic acts undermining national security. Yet transactions continued in alleys and through trusted intermediaries connecting suppliers with customers. Women hid extra sugar in multiple containers, terrified of raids meaning confiscation, fines, and public shame as hoarders. Some developed false bottom cabinets and hidden compartments beneath floorboards. Neighbors established elaborate sharing systems, parceling out sugar reserves during emergencies. Children learned to never mention seeing extra sugar anywhere. The sweetness represented not just taste, but survival, enabling food preservation techniques, meaning the difference between adequate nutrition and hunger during seasons when fresh food disappeared completely from family tables. Caught fish exceeding legal limits fed families who saw abundant aquatic resources as common property despite laws declaring otherwise. Men and children fished streams at night, taking bass and catfish beyond daily limits or from posted private waters. Each fish represented needed protein, making legal limits seem arbitrary when hunger was immediate. Game wardens confiscated equipment, issued fines families couldn't pay, or pressed charges, meaning jail time away from struggling families. Yet fishing continued, because good catches meant several meals, fish cleaned and fried immediately or preserved through smoking. Children watched for law enforcement while keeping lines in water. Understanding feeding family mattered more than respecting catch limits. Some communities established warning signal systems using specific bird calls or lantern patterns. Families developed quick methods to hide catches during surprise inspections. Women learned to can fish rapidly, destroying evidence while preserving protein. The processed fish sustained families through lean periods, each jar representing both nourishment and calculated legal risk taken for survival during impossibly difficult times. Horse meat butchered and consumed violated taboos and ordinances classifying horses as companions rather than livestock. Families facing starvation slaughtered old farm horses or bought worn animals cheaply from auctions, processing meat secretly because neighbors would report such activities. The meat required long cooking, often ground for sausages or stewed until tender, providing protein when nothing else was available. Local laws prohibited horse slaughter for human consumption, with violators facing prosecution and social ostracism from communities viewing eating horses as barbaric. Yet families continued because survival overrode conventions, and one horse provided hundreds of pounds of protein. Children were warned never to discuss what meat they'd eaten, understanding honesty could bring authorities and destroy reputations. Butchering happened at night. Carcasses processed quickly and distributed among trusted families sharing legal risk. Women developed elaborate methods to disguise horse meat as other proteins when serving to unsuspecting guests. Communities maintained strict silence about these practices, protecting each other from legal and social consequences. This wasn't preference but pure desperation, turning prohibited animals into survival food. Stolen chickens from commercial farms provided eggs and meat when legal purchases became impossible for unemployed families. Men would slip into hen houses at night, taking birds from operations with hundreds where individual losses went unnoticed. The chickens were hidden in makeshift coops or processed immediately, their theft constituting both burglary and agricultural crime carrying significant penalties. Each bird represented weeks of eggs or one substantial meal, making the risk worthwhile for families watching children grow thin. Farm owners increasingly installed lights, alarms, and guards, turning chicken theft into dangerous cat-and-mouse games. Yet thefts continued because hunger overrode fear of imprisonment, and chickens reproduced faster than owners could count. Some communities developed codes about which farms were acceptable targets. Corporate operations, yes. Struggling family farms, never. Women learned to butcher chickens silently, minimizing noise that might alert neighbors. Children were taught elaborate excuses explaining where new chickens came from. This wasn't organized crime, but survival theft. Families taking food from those who had plenty to feed their own, who had nothing. Wild turkey hunted year-round violated conservation laws designed to protect declining populations from overhunting. Families tracked turkeys through forests regardless of season, taking birds that provided 10 to 15 pounds of meat when legal hunting remained months away. The poaching threatened turkey populations wildlife officials worked to restore, yet hungry families couldn't wait for arbitrary seasons when children needed feeding now. Each bird was processed completely, meat preserved and feathers used for pillows or trade, nothing wasted when the illegal taking carried such risk. Wardens set up elaborate sting operations with decoy turkeys and hidden observers, arresting hunters whose equipment and catch provided undeniable evidence. Yet hunting continued because turkeys represented abundant protein in forests where families had hunted for generations before governments created seasons and limits. Some families maintained detailed knowledge of turkey habits, tracking flocks year-round to know exactly where birds would be when hunger struck. This wasn't commercial hunting, but subsistence taking, families harvesting wild resources that seemed rightfully theirs, regardless of legal designations protecting wildlife for future generations. Homemade cheese produced without licenses violated new dairy regulations requiring certified facilities and health inspections. Farm women made cheese using traditional methods passed through generations, selling it to neighbors who trusted their cleanliness. The cheese was crafted in farm kitchens using raw milk, starter cultures, and knowledge refined over decades. Each wheel or block provided protein and calcium at half the price of store cheese, making it crucial for families stretching food budgets. Inspectors could shut down operations, impose heavy fines, or prosecute sellers for operating unlicensed food businesses. Yet cheesemaking continued because it transformed surplus milk into valuable protein that didn't spoil quickly. Women developed warning systems to hide cheesemaking equipment during surprise inspections. Some maintained two operations: licensed and visible for small legal sales, unlicensed and hidden for volume production. Communities protected their cheesemakers fiercely, understanding these women provided essential nutrition at affordable prices. The cheese sustained families through winter when fresh milk production declined and stores raised prices beyond reach. This wasn't commercial production, but traditional survival craft, criminalized by regulations designed to protect public health. Roadkill deer collected and processed violated health codes prohibiting consumption of animals not killed specifically for food. Families who discovered fresh deer struck by cars would process the meat immediately, seeing no difference between roadkill and hunted venison when both animals had been healthy moments before death. Each carcass represented 60 pounds of protein absolutely free, making the illegal collection irresistible to hungry families. Officials prohibited roadkill consumption, citing contamination risks and inability to verify cause of death, threatening prosecution for anyone caught collecting carcasses. Yet families continued because recently killed deer provided the same quality meat as legally hunted animals at zero cost. Men developed networks sharing roadkill locations, racing to sites before officials arrived to confiscate valuable meat. Women learned rapid processing techniques, transforming roadkill into indistinguishable cuts before anyone questioned the source. Some families maintained that all their deer came from legal hunting, producing fabricated tags and licenses. Communities maintained strict silence about roadkill practices, protecting each other from prosecution, while ensuring none of this valuable protein went to waste during times of desperate hunger. Untaxed liquor sales at unlicensed establishments violated alcohol control laws requiring permits and tax payments. Families converted basements and back rooms into illegal saloons, selling bootleg whiskey to neighbors who couldn't afford legal bar prices. Each shot sold for 10 cents when legal establishments charged a quarter, making unlicensed saloons community gathering places where working men could afford occasional drinks. Revenue agents raided these operations regularly, arresting owners and confiscating inventory and equipment worth months of income. Yet the illegal bars reopened within days, often in new locations because demand remained constant and few legal alternatives existed. Women ran many establishments, understanding that steady alcohol sales provided the only reliable income during unemployment. Children learned to watch for police vehicles, warning systems allowing quick hiding of alcohol and transformation of saloons into innocent-looking living rooms. Communities protected their unlicensed establishments, viewing them as essential social infrastructure rather than criminal enterprises. The establishments survived through depression because they served genuine community needs while generating income for desperate families willing to risk prosecution for survival. Squirrels, trapped or hunted out of season, provided small game meat when legal hunting remained closed and families needed protein. Children would set simple traps or hunt with slingshots, taking squirrels that dressed out to less than a pound but added crucial meat to otherwise meatless stews. Each squirrel helped stretch other ingredients, bones adding flavor to broths, while meat provided texture and nutrition. Game laws technically prohibited taking squirrels outside designated seasons, with violators facing fines and confiscation of hunting equipment. Yet families continued because squirrels were abundant, easily caught, and provided real nutritional value despite their small size. Boys learned trapping and hunting from fathers who'd learned from their fathers, skills applied regardless of arbitrary seasons. Women developed elaborate recipes disguising the small portions of meat, stretching 3 squirrels to feed families of 8. Some communities organized youth hunting parties, teaching children both hunting skills and the importance of never reporting family activities to authorities. This wasn't commercial harvesting, but subsistence hunting. Families taking small game they'd always relied on regardless of seasonal restrictions designed to protect wildlife populations. Homemade fruit preserves sold without licenses violated food safety regulations requiring commercial kitchen facilities and inspections. Women made jams and jellies using traditional recipes, selling them to neighbors who trusted their cleanliness and valued their superior flavor. Each jar sold for 15 cents when store preserves cost 35, making homemade products crucial for families needing fruits vitamins but unable to afford commercial prices. Health inspectors could shut down operations, impose fines, or prosecute for operating unlicensed food businesses endangering public health. Yet preserve making continued because it transformed summer's fruit abundance into valuable products sustaining families through winter. Women developed sophisticated networks selling through word of mouth rather than visible markets that might attract official attention. Some maintained front operations, selling baked goods legally while moving preserved fruits through back channels. Communities understood these products were safer than many commercial offerings, made with care impossible in factory operations. The preserves provided essential nutrition and income, each jar representing both tradition and calculated risk. This wasn't commercial canning, but traditional preservation criminalized by regulations designed to protect consumers from contamination risks. Butchered turtles from public waters violated fishing regulations prohibiting harvest of certain species or exceeding catch limits. Men would wade into ponds and streams, catching snapping turtles that provided several pounds of meat with flavor resembling chicken. Each turtle represented a substantial meal, meat processed into soups and stews that stretched to feed entire families. Wildlife officials increasingly restricted turtle harvests, protecting declining populations from overharvesting, threatening prosecution for illegal taking. Yet, families continued because turtles offered free protein in waters they'd fished for generations. The catching required skill and courage, snapping turtles capable of serious injury with powerful jaws. Processing was elaborate, shells cracked and meat extracted in traditional ways passed through generations. Some families specialized in turtle preparation, trading processed meat for other goods in informal economies. Children learned to identify legal versus protected species, though desperation sometimes overrode conservation concerns. This wasn't commercial harvesting but subsistence fishing, families taking aquatic resources they considered rightfully theirs, regardless of regulations protecting declining wildlife populations from further depletion. Garden produce grown on public or unused private land violated property laws prohibiting cultivation without owner permission. Families would plant vegetables in abandoned lots, roadside ditches, and unused corners of public parks, creating guerrilla gardens that provided crucial fresh food. Each garden represented both sustenance and trespass, with growers facing prosecution if discovered. Tomatoes, beans, squash, and corn grew in hidden patches tended secretly before dawn and after dark, families hoping to harvest before anyone discovered their illegal plots. Property owners occasionally destroyed gardens upon discovery, while officials cited growers for trespassing or unauthorized use of public lands. Yet gardening continued because vegetables meant the difference between adequate nutrition and malnutrition for families with no land of their own. Some communities organized coordinated planting across multiple unused sites, distributing risk while maximizing food production. Children learned to water and weed quietly. Understanding discovery could mean losing entire harvests. Women developed elaborate methods for disguising garden plots as natural vegetation, This wasn't theft, but survival farming, families growing food on land that otherwise sat idle while people went hungry. Slaughtered rabbits raised in illegal urban pens violated city ordinances prohibiting livestock within municipal limits. Families kept rabbit hutches in basements, garages, or hidden backyard corners, raising meat that dressed out at 2 to 3 pounds per animal. Each rabbit represented a complete protein source, animals reproducing quickly and requiring minimal feed, making them ideal for urban meat production. City officials could fine families, confiscate animals, or prosecute for violating public health codes designed to prevent urban livestock operations. Yet rabbit raising continued because a single breeding pair could produce dozens of offspring annually, creating sustainable meat supplies for unemployed families. Women learned to butcher rabbits quietly, processing carcasses behind locked doors where neighbors couldn't witness illegal activities. Some developed elaborate cover stories explaining where meat came from, claiming wild rabbits trapped legally outside city limits. Children were strictly warned never to mention the rabbits to anyone outside the family. Communities protected their rabbit raisers. Understanding these operations provided essential protein at minimal cost when store-bought meat became impossible luxury during Depression's worst years. Bartered eggs and butter traded without declaring income violated tax laws requiring reporting of all economic transactions. Families would trade surplus eggs and butter for other goods, creating informal economies that sustained communities without generating taxable income. Each trade represented survival economics, families exchanging what they could produce for what they couldn't. Tax officials increasingly pursued unreported income, viewing these barter networks as tax evasion schemes depriving governments of needed revenue during fiscal crises. Yet bartering continued because formal economy had abandoned these families, leaving them to create their own systems. Women became expert traders, knowing exactly what eggs were worth in flour, butter, and sugar. Some maintained detailed mental records of trades, ensuring fairness without creating written evidence officials might use for prosecution. Communities developed sophisticated barter networks connecting dozens of families, goods, and services flowing without money changing hands. Children learned to never discuss what items their families traded or received. This wasn't tax evasion strategy, but survival economics, families helping each other outside systems that had failed them completely during economic collapse. Hunted migratory birds outside regulated seasons violated federal laws protecting species traveling ancient flyways. Families would shoot ducks, geese, and doves regardless of season, taking birds that provided several pounds of meat each. The federal government aggressively prosecuted migratory bird violations, viewing them as serious crimes undermining international conservation treaties. Each bird represented significant protein, making prosecution risk worthwhile for hungry families. Wardens used sophisticated surveillance techniques, photographing violators and building cases for federal prosecution, carrying significant penalties. Yet hunting continued because migratory birds passed through in enormous flocks, seemingly abundant resources that families had harvested for generations. Men taught sons to identify birds and their patterns, skills deployed regardless of arbitrary seasons. Some families maintained that all their birds came from legal hunting during brief open seasons, freezing illegal kills to pass as legitimate later. Communities warned each other about increased enforcement, pausing hunts during crackdowns before resuming when surveillance relaxed. This wasn't commercial hunting, but subsistence taking, families harvesting traditional resources now protected by federal laws prioritizing conservation over human hunger. Caught crawfish from private ponds violated trespass laws and property rights, yet families harvested these crustaceans wherever they found them. Each pound of crawfish tails provided protein similar to shrimp, making them valuable catches for families unable to afford seafood. Pond owners occasionally prosecuted trespassers, viewing crawfish harvesting as theft of private property, but most were never caught. Families would wade into ponds at night, scooping crawfish into buckets before dawn brought potential witnesses. The crawfish were boiled immediately, meat picked from shells and used in everything from stews to pies. Children learned to move silently through water, harvesting quickly before anyone noticed their presence. Some families maintained detailed knowledge of which ponds held largest crawfish populations and which owners were most likely to prosecute. Women developed elaborate recipes stretching small amounts of crawfish meat to feed entire families. Communities shared information about crawfish locations and harvest techniques, building collective knowledge while maintaining strict silence about illegal activities. This wasn't commercial harvesting, but survival fishing, taking aquatic resources from waters legally off-limits, but practically accessible to desperate families. Home-cured bacon produced without inspections violated meat safety regulations requiring certified facilities. Families would cure pork bellies using traditional methods with salt, sugar, and smoke, creating bacon identical to commercial products but at fraction of the cost. Each side of bacon represented weeks of breakfast protein, making the illegal preservation worthwhile despite prosecution risks. Inspectors could confiscate meat, impose heavy fines, or shut down operations, but many families were never discovered. The curing process took weeks. Bellies packed in salt and hung in smokehouses where hardwood smoke preserved the meat and added flavor. Women learned curing from mothers who'd learned from their mothers, skills spanning generations applied regardless of new regulations. Some families maintained that all their bacon came from legally inspected commercial sources, hiding homemade products when inspectors visited. Communities protected bacon makers, understanding these products were often safer than questionable commercial offerings. Children learned to never mention seeing bacon curing in smokehouses or basements. This wasn't commercial meat production, but traditional preservation criminalized by regulations designed to protect public health from contamination risks. Trapped muskrats harvested year-round violated seasonal restrictions designed to protect breeding populations. Families would set trap lines along waterways, checking them daily for muskrats whose pelts brought cash and meat-supplemented diets. Each muskrat provided both income and food, making them doubly valuable to struggling families. Wildlife officials aggressively pursued illegal trappers, viewing year-round harvesting as serious crime threatening muskrat populations. Yet trapping continued because muskrats were abundant and families desperately needed both cash and protein. Men would skin pelts carefully, stretching and drying them for sale to buyers who didn't question origins. The meat was strong-flavored but edible, processed into stews that stretched other ingredients. Some families specialized in muskrat preparation, knowing techniques that made the meat palatable for even skeptical eaters. Children learned to run trap lines efficiently, checking dozens of sets before school. Communities maintained strict silence about trapping activities, protecting trappers from prosecution while ensuring valuable resources reached families who needed them most. This wasn't commercial trapping, but survival harvesting. Families taking sodium cyclamate. Sweeteners were the diet craze before the diet craze. Found in everything from light pudding to slim sodas, cyclamate promised sweet flavor without calories, the holy grail of 1980s food science. People believed in it, companies profited from it, and health agencies panicked over it. It was the decade's answer to indulgence without consequence, and every brand wanted in on the trend. Cafeterias, bakeries, and soda fountains stocked it proudly, certain they were serving the future of healthy sweetness. Then the studies hit: lab rats, cancer scares, and a wave of panic that turned every diet label into a potential danger sign. Early animal studies hinted that the additive might be carcinogenic, and by the mid-1980s, the United States pulled it off the market completely. Europe followed soon after, though a few countries still clung to it for years. Consumers were confused, wondering why yesterday's miracle was suddenly today's poison. The ban forced food companies to scramble for substitutes, giving rise to the aspartame era, a solution that sparked even more controversy. For many 1980s dieters, cyclamate was their first taste of betrayal, a chemical sweetheart that turned out to be a bad relationship. Heinz colored ketchup experiments were decades ahead of their time, and not in a good way. Before the neon green and purple nightmares of the 1990s, Heinz tried out orange, mustard yellow, and pea soup green ketchup in the 1970s, and traumatized shoppers instantly. Families opened bottles expecting fun, but ended up staring into something that looked like craft paint. Even restaurant owners refused to serve it, saying customers thought it looked spoiled. Kids dared each other to eat it, but the sight alone ruined the appetite. Heinz's research department reportedly called it a visual breakthrough, which just made it sound worse. The taste was the same, but the color destroyed the illusion of food. Red ketchup says comfort. Green ketchup says science experiment. Heinz insisted it was a playful twist for kids, but even children rejected it on sight. Supermarkets reported bottles leaking as the dye separated into streaks of horror. It lasted just long enough to become an urban legend, the kind of product that made you thankful for the normal red stuff. It was innovation at its weirdest. Ketchup for people who liked fear with their fries. Of all the 1950s food inventions, canned bread might be the strangest, and somehow the most practical. It came in shiny tins that promised freshness preserved for years. The dough was baked directly inside the can, resulting in a dense brown loaf that slid out like a sponge. It was oddly satisfying to open, and surprisingly edible with enough butter or jam. Advertisers pitched it as the future of convenience, perfect for camping, lunchboxes, and the inevitable nuclear apocalypse. Families loved it because it felt both comforting and futuristic, a loaf built to survive anything, even the end of the world. It was proof that America's appetite for innovation extended all the way to its pantry shelves. Housewives stocked it next to canned peaches and Spam, proud of their preparedness. It was comfort food with a metal edge, part bakery, part bunker ration. The taste? Sweet, slightly metallic, and unforgettably weird. Canned bread captured the contradictions of the era perfectly: optimistic, paranoid, and determined to can everything, even tradition. It's still made in small corners of New England today, but as a curiosity, not a comfort. Back then, though, it was survival you could slice. Campbell's cream of mushroom soup was the secret backbone of 1950s cooking. Found in every pantry, it wasn't just soup. It was the glue holding casseroles together across suburban America. A single can could stretch leftovers, feed a family, and make almost anything taste homemade. Housewives mixed it with tuna, green beans, chicken, or rice, creating dishes that were easy, creamy, and dependable. It was food engineering disguised as comfort food. For many families, that can represented more than a shortcut. It was a sign that even the busiest mother could still serve a meal made with love. It was innovation meeting affection, where a can opener replaced a rolling pin and nobody minded the trade. Every church potluck and holiday table owed something to that red and white can. It wasn't glamorous, but it was reliable. A flavor that said home in every bite. The genius was in its versatility. It made ordinary ingredients feel indulgent. For women balancing new appliances and old expectations, Campbell's was a quiet helper in the background, saving time and sanity. Its rich, salty aroma defined what dinner smelled like in post-war kitchens. By the time you saw that familiar label, you already knew it was going to be good. Campbell's cream of mushroom soup turned cooking from a chore into a shortcut, and America gladly took the deal. Few foods say future and fear quite like the 1950s potted meat luncheon loaf, an edible contradiction trapped in translucent gelatin. Billed as the modern meal, it promised protein, convenience, and elegance, all packed neatly into a shimmering cube. Housewives opened the can with a satisfying hiss, only to reveal a pinkish slab wobbling like something from another planet. The gelatin was meant to seal in freshness, though it mostly sealed in terror. Still, the advertisements were stunning. Smiling families slicing perfect meat squares, garnished with pineapple rings and lettuce. It looked clean, futuristic, like something astronauts might eat at a dinner party on Mars. And for a country obsessed with modernity, that was enough. No one wanted to cook anymore, not when canned chemistry could do the job faster. The taste? Imagine bologna with stage fright. It slid, it quivered, it haunted you. But to 1950s consumers, the gelatin loaf was proof humanity had conquered food itself. It wasn't just a meal, it was a message. The kitchen of tomorrow had arrived, and it came with preservatives. For better or worse, the gelatin craze turned ordinary meals into edible science experiments, each one wobbling proudly under fluorescent light. Over time, these meat miracles disappeared from shelves, victims of changing tastes and better judgment. But their legacy lives on in every molded salad and canned mystery meat that dares call itself gourmet. Swanson Great Starts. Breakfast TV dinners were frozen optimism at its frostiest. They came in divided trays featuring scrambled eggs, pancakes, and sausages, all perfectly soggy by the time they hit your plate. The idea was breakfast made easy, but it ended up tasting like Sunday morning regret. The pancakes absorbed the syrup like sponges soaking in despair. The eggs had a rubbery snap that made you question if they were ever eggs at all. Even the sausage, supposedly the star, was gray and flavorless, like breakfast had just given up. The eggs looked like yellow sponges, and the pancakes had the consistency of damp sponges. Even the syrup was trapped in its own compartment, slowly merging into every corner of the tray. The smell alone warned you that no great start was coming. The pancakes were rubbery, the eggs tasted like cardboard, and the syrup managed to be both too thin and too sweet. Even the sausage looked tired, gray, greasy, and spiritually defeated. It was convenience at its most depressing, the kind of meal that made you rethink your entire morning. Swanson had cornered the dinner market, but breakfast proved too fragile to freeze. Great Starts turned into a short-lived joke, a frozen reminder that some things are better made fresh or not at all. Fat-free, Snackwell's cookies were the guilt-free dream of 1980s grocery shoppers, and the biggest nutritional scam of its time. Introduced during the anti-fat craze, these cookies promised indulgence without consequences. They were everywhere, in office kitchens, lunchboxes, and late-night commercials urging people to snack well, live well. But to replace fat, manufacturers added mountains of sugar, starch, and artificial ingredients, creating a fat-free dessert that was anything but healthy. People devoured them by the sleeve, believing the lack of fat made them immune to guilt. Dietitians warned it was marketing trickery, but the promise of no fat, no problem was too sweet to resist. For a while, Snackwells even became a cultural symbol of the era, the cookie that let you believe health came in a box. Nutritionists later revealed they often had more calories than regular cookies. Consumers didn't lose weight. They gained confusion. The cookies were sweet, addictive, and left you hungrier after every serving. For years, people believed they had found the loophole to dieting, until obesity rates kept climbing. By the 1990s, Snackwells quietly reformulated or vanished from shelves, another casualty of misplaced trust in food science. It was the 1980s in a nutshell. We cut the fat, but somehow ended up with more junk. Clam juice bottles were the sad, fishy ghosts of 1970s grocery store shelves. Sold as both a health elixir and a kitchen essential, they were supposed to make cooking faster and easier, a splash of ocean flavor right from your fridge. In reality, they were briny nightmares waiting to ruin dinner. One sip, and you'd swear you'd just licked the side of a boat. Most people bought it once out of curiosity, then left it to haunt their refrigerator forever. The label promised pure sea freshness, but what it delivered was low tide in a bottle. Even professional chefs admitted it tasted like seawater filtered through regret. Advertisers claimed it was a natural energy booster, rich in minerals and flavor, but no amount of marketing could mask the fact that it smelled like low tide and regret. Home cooks tried using it in chowders or sauces, but one pour was enough to ruin an entire meal or a marriage. The bottle itself was a trap, glass, slim, and slightly foggy, daring you to forget it existed. Once opened, it would migrate to the back of the refrigerator, where it would live forever, untouched, unspoiled, and immortal. Even decades later, people still find half-empty bottles of it behind the mustard, preserved like relics from the age of bad ideas. Clam juice was not a beverage, not a shortcut, and definitely not food. It was proof that the 1970s could sell anything once, but only once. The 1950s were an era of bizarre inventions. but few were as hauntingly memorable as the mechanical ice cream cone licker. Marketed as a fun training toy, it featured a fake cone topped with a spinning rubber tongue that rotated rapidly when turned on. Children were supposed to hold it up and practice licking without wasting real ice cream. The result? A generation of traumatized kids and confused parents. The ads called it educational, teaching hand-eye coordination through dessert simulation. But the reality looked more like a carnival nightmare. The rubber tongue made unsettling slurping noises, often flicking droplets of melted ice cream substitute across the room. Sometimes it jammed mid-lick, leaving the toy whirring angrily while kids screamed. It was the perfect symbol of the decade's faith in machines, proof that even pleasure could be automated, and humanity would be better for it. Parents bought it anyway, because the 1950s were the golden age of gimmicks, when no one wanted to be left behind by progress, no matter how creepy it looked. The mechanical licker was soon discontinued, likely after realizing that children didn't need help eating ice cream. They were already experts. But for a brief, bizarre moment, the future had a face, and it was a spinning rubber tongue. Kool-Aid wasn't just a drink, it was a ritual. Every kid in the 1950s knew the sound of that powder hitting a pitcher and the rush of color swirling through the water. With just sugar, water, and imagination, a world of flavor appeared for pennies. It was bright, sweet, and affordable, the perfect symbol of middle-class fun. The first sip was pure excitement, too sweet, too colorful, and somehow perfect every single time. It wasn't just a beverage, it was joy in motion, stirred up by tiny hands and summer light. Kids loved it because they could make it themselves, stirring with wide grins as the water turned electric red or neon green. Parents loved it because it brought laughter to the table without breaking the grocery budget. Kool-Aid was a kind of magic, the ability to make something wonderful from nearly nothing. It was the taste of summer, birthday parties, and endless afternoons. The smiling face on the packet was more than a mascot. It was a promise of joy in liquid form. In an era of post-war optimism, Kool-Aid was liquid happiness poured straight from the pitcher, a reminder that even small things could make life feel extraordinary. Leave it to the 1950s to find a way to combine infants and industrial design. The glass baby bottle with a metal nipple was marketed as the hygienic choice for modern mothers. It promised durability, style, and the reassuring shine of polished chrome. In practice, it was a dentist's nightmare waiting to happen. Babies were encouraged to suckle from small metal spouts that turned freezing cold in winter and scorching hot in summer. The bottles themselves were heavy, slippery, and prone to shattering at the slightest drop. So basically, perfect for small, uncoordinated hands. Yet the ads were stunning. Rosy-cheeked babies drinking happily while mothers beamed at the future of feeding. Hospitals even endorsed them, believing glass and metal meant cleanliness. Plastic was considered cheap, rubber unsanitary. No one mentioned burns or lacerations. It was the golden age of over-engineering, where even baby care had to look like a rocket launch. Parents wanted sleek, scientific solutions to everything, even if they made no sense. By the end of the decade, common sense won. Soft silicone nipples replaced steel, and bottles became lighter and safer. But for a time, feeding your child looked like refueling a car. Clunky, dangerous, and somehow deeply optimistic. Aids Diet Candy was one of those ideas that seemed genius until the world changed. Sold in small boxes, these chewy, chocolate-like cubes promised to take the edge off hunger while feeling indulgent. They actually worked, mostly because they tasted like vitamins and guilt. The commercials showed slim women smiling as they chewed, pretending it was delicious. The slogan, "AIDS helps you lose weight," became an instant disaster once the AIDS epidemic hit a decade later. By then, even loyal customers couldn't stomach the name, no matter how many rebrands the company tried. The name alone wasn't the problem in the 1970s. It was catchy, short, and even sophisticated. Then the 1980s arrived, and the global AIDS crisis made that name catastrophic. No marketing campaign could recover from the tragic coincidence. The product itself wasn't terrible. more caramel chew than candy. But no one could stomach the association. Within a few years, AIDS vanished completely. It remains one of the most unfortunate rebranding stories in history, a cautionary tale that timing can kill even the sweetest idea. Rely tampons by Procter & Gamble were a triumph of marketing and a tragedy of science. Sold in grocery aisles and advertised as revolutionary, they promised unmatched absorbency through their unique super sponge design. For a while, they were hailed as a breakthrough in women's health. But in 1980, the dream turned deadly. The synthetic fibers used in Rely tampons were linked to toxic shock syndrome, a bacterial infection that proved fatal for dozens of women. The product's sponge-like material, designed to trap more moisture, also created the perfect environment for bacteria to grow. Doctors quickly raised alarms, but Procter & Gamble's marketing machine was faster than the science. It took a national outcry and mounting deaths for the truth to finally hit the shelves. The recall was swift, the outrage faster, and the damage permanent. Rely disappeared from stores almost overnight, but the incident changed the entire industry. New safety standards, labeling laws, and medical research came directly from the disaster. It was a haunting reminder that even innovation can go horribly wrong when profit outpaces precaution. For a generation of shoppers, Rely wasn't just a brand. It was a warning stamped in fine print. Diet shakes in paint-can-style tins were the height of scientific dieting and the bottom of human appetite. These oversized metal cans promised controlled calories and perfect figures, as long as you could choke down what was inside. The shakes were sold in flavors like chocolate, vanilla, and tropical, though they all tasted like sweet rust. The powder stuck to everything: blenders, spoons, your throat, and the metallic smell never left the kitchen. Opening one felt like prying into an industrial accident. The scoop inside was always buried, forcing you to dig through clouds of powder that coated your arms like chalk. Mixing it with milk turned the liquid gray, not brown, and somehow made it thicker than cement. The aftertaste lingered like a chemical warning. You weren't just dieting. You were participating in a science experiment gone wrong. Companies called them complete meal solutions, but most people needed a real meal just to recover from the experience. Advertisements showed glamorous models holding giant tins like trophies, as if suffering were chic. In the end, the only weight most people lost was their patience. Those cans promised control, but they mostly delivered a reminder: food should never taste like aluminum ambition. Before we knew better, and sometimes even after, we made sure cigarettes were everywhere. The 1950s took that mission seriously, rolling out vending machines that sold cigarettes in a can. You'd pop in a coin, twist a knob, and out came a tidy aluminum can filled with smokes. It was modern, sanitary, and portable, the cigarette industry's idea of innovation. Ads called it the future of freshness, as if tobacco was suddenly a health food. The design mimicked canned soda, another booming industry, turning nicotine into a stylish accessory for every pocket. Schools had them, hospitals had them. Even train stations had glowing vending machines urging people to enjoy life, smoke modern. Nurses on break smoked beside patients. Students traded cans like baseball cards. The message was clear: smoking wasn't just normal, it was patriotic, scientific, and sophisticated. Cigarettes in a can perfectly captured the 1950s illusion of progress, when even addiction could be sold as convenience. By the 1960s, health warnings dimmed the glow, and the vending cans vanished. But for a brief decade, they were the metallic symbol of an age that thought every problem could be solved with packaging. And if the problem was, how do I smoke more efficiently? Well, the 1950s already had the answer sealed and ready to ship. Jell-O gelatin molds turned every dessert table into a display of edible architecture. Bright, colorful, and a little bizarre, they were the showpieces of mid-century kitchens. Every family had a favorite combination: pineapple chunks, marshmallows, even shredded carrots suspended in translucent wobbling towers. Jell-O wasn't just food, it was performance. Mothers took pride in their molds, comparing layers and colors like painters admiring canvases. When that dessert wobbled onto the table, it wasn't just dessert, it was applause for creativity disguised as dinner. It represented control over nature itself. Sweetness, color, and texture, all perfectly contained in a shimmering mold. For housewives, it was creativity made visible, proof that the home could still be an art form. The sound of that wobbly jiggle at dinner parties became a symbol of pride, the centerpiece of gatherings from church socials to Christmas dinners. It photographed beautifully, tasted nostalgic, and looked futuristic. Kids loved its bounce. Adults admired its precision. Jell-O made dessert something both playful and sophisticated. In a decade obsessed with presentation and perfection, it captured the exact balance between science and showmanship. Every mold was a small, sweet victory for the modern homemaker. Crystal Pepsi was one of the boldest and briefest soda experiments of the late 1980s. It promised purity, innovation, and the excitement of a cola without color. The clear, caffeine-free drink came in sleek glass bottles that looked more like something from a health spa than a vending machine. The marketing was futuristic, clean, minimalist, and dripping with 1980s confidence. Commercials showed waterfalls, lasers, and people in white suits drinking clarity in a bottle. It was Pepsi's boldest move yet, but the taste didn't match the hype. People lined up to try it, expecting magic, and got confusion instead. The flavor was flat, oddly sweet, and missing the bite that made cola famous. Pepsi called it clarity, but most called it weird. Within a year, the product fizzled, joining the ranks of marketing myths that burned bright and vanished fast. Critics later called it the most 1980s drink ever made, all style, no substance, and a little too confident in its own coolness. Crystal Pepsi may have been banned by poor sales, not law, but its spirit fits perfectly in this list. An idea too clean for a world that wanted its cola dark, caffeinated, and unapologetically messy. Space food sticks were supposed to make you feel like an astronaut, but most people felt more like hostages to bad taste. Marketed as the food of the future, these chewy, tube-shaped snacks promised energy, convenience, and space-age nutrition. In reality, they were rubbery chocolate glue wrapped in foil, sticking to your teeth and your soul in equal measure. The packaging screamed adventure, but the flavor whispered punishment. They were dense enough to survive re-entry, yet fragile enough to crumble into brown dust if left in the sun. Parents kept buying them because kids loved the NASA tie-in, not because anyone actually wanted to eat them. It was the only snack that could make both astronauts and children question their life choices. They came in flavors like caramel, peanut butter, and chocolate, though none resembled anything found on Earth. Kids begged their parents for them, imagining themselves floating in zero gravity, only to realize astronauts probably ate better than this. The ads showed smiling families pretending this was adventure food, but in every kitchen, the reaction was the same: confusion, then regret. The texture was somewhere between an eraser and a protein bar that lost its will to live. They disappeared by the 1980s, only to return decades later as a nostalgia novelty. Because apparently, even bad memories can make money if you wrap them in silver. Only in the 1950s could someone look at a car ashtray and think, you know what this needs? A steak. Car ashtrays that doubled as mini grills were the ultimate gadget for the man on the go, or the man who just couldn't wait for dinner. Designed to plug into the car's cigarette lighter, these chrome curiosities promise to cook your meal while you cruise. Picture it: Dad behind the wheel, one hand on the steering column, the other turning a sizzling burger on the dashboard. The smell of gasoline, tobacco, and half-cooked beef filled the cabin like some dystopian roadside diner. It was marketed as the perfect road trip companion, ideal for busy executives and outdoorsmen on the move. Safety warnings were non-existent, because of course they were. One wrong turn and you weren't just flipping your lunch, you were flipping your car. Still, it captured everything Americans loved about the decade: convenience, confidence, and a reckless belief that anything could be improved with a little electricity. The ads boasted, "No smoke, no mess," which was a blatant lie. The only thing they didn't lie about was that you'd never go hungry again, just possibly unconscious from the fumes. By the end of the decade, fire departments everywhere had seen enough dashboard barbecue disasters to quietly retire the invention. But for a brief, glorious moment, the open road smelled like progress, bad decisions, and burnt hot dogs. Which illegal depression food would you have risked everything for to feed your family? Drop your answer in the comments below, hit that like button, and subscribe so we can keep uncovering the forbidden foods that kept desperate families alive during America's darkest economic years.